Stripped of her pack, her warmth, and even her name, she was cast into the unforgiving winter woods as a sacrifice to the frost. Her enemies assumed the merciless cold would finish her, leaving nothing but a stubborn stain of blood on the pristine snow. They were entirely wrong. The terrors lurking in the ice didn't devour her. They kneeled in deference to the dark entity that had already staked a claim on her soul. The great hall of the Silverpine Pack, usually a sanctuary of warmth and roasted meats, felt colder than the blizzards howling beyond its stone walls. Clara Hayes knelt on the freezing cobblestone, the rough spun fabric of her Omega garments doing nothing to stop the violent trembling of her fragile frame. She was 20 years old, yet she possessed no wolf. In a world where strength was currency and fangs were law, Clara was a beggar, a defect. Above her, sitting on a high-backed chair carved from ancient timber, was Alpha Cedric Gallagher. He was a mountain of a man, with a beard the color of rusted iron and a temper to match. Beside him sat Becca Whitmore, the Luna, her lips curled into a permanent sneer that deepened every time her gaze fell upon Clara. "You stand accused of high treason," Cedric's voice boomed, rattling the iron chandeliers overhead. "The healing draughts prepared for my son, little Toby, were laced with nightshade. The poultice was found beneath your cot, Clara." "I didn't do it, Alpha." Clara's voice was a ragged whisper, her throat raw from hours of crying. "I swear it on the moon goddess. I love Toby. I would never—" "Silence the mutt," Becca hissed, leaning forward. "We all know you despise your station. You thought that by crippling the air, you might create chaos. You are a rat in the grain, Clara, an Omega without a wolf, lacking the very instincts that make us honorable." Clara looked around the hall. The faces of the pack, people she had cooked for, mended clothes for, bled for, were turned away in disgust or twisted in anger. Arthur Pendleton, the lead guard who used to sneak her extra rations when the winters grew lean, stared firmly at his boots. Even Elder Godwin, who had taught her the names of the medicinal herbs, refused to meet her eyes. She was utterly, profoundly alone. The evidence had been planted, a flawless frame job by Becca to rid the pack of an Omega she found unsightly and useless. "The law of our ancestors is clear," Cedric announced, standing to his full, terrifying height. "For an attempt on the Alpha bloodline, the penalty is death. But I am a merciful Alpha. I will not spill pack blood on this sacred floor." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Clara looked up, a foolish, desperate spark of hope igniting in her chest. "You are hereby stripped of the Silverpine name," Cedric continued, his words falling like an executioner's axe. "You are stripped of our protection, our fire, and our food. You will be banished to the whispering wastes. If the moon goddess deems you innocent, she will guide you through the long frost. If not, the winter will claim what is rightfully hers." The hope shattered into jagged shards. Banishment to the whispering wastes in the dead of the long frost was not mercy. It was a prolonged, agonizing execution. The wastes were an endless labyrinth of dead, frozen woods, populated by feral rogues, starving predators, and temperatures that could snap bone. "No," Clara begged, crawling forward, scraping her knees on the stone. "Please, Alpha Cedric, just kill me here. A quick death. Please." "Take her," Cedric commanded, turning his back. Heavy hands seized her arms. Arthur and another guard dragged her thrashing, sobbing body through the hall. They hauled her out into the courtyard, where the blizzard was already screaming, whipping ice crystals against her exposed skin. They dragged her to the massive ironwood gates at the edge of the territory. "I'm sorry, Clara," Arthur muttered, his voice barely audible over the wind as he shoved her past the boundary line. May the goddess be quick about it. The heavy gates slammed shut with a final, echoing thud. The heavy iron bar slid into place. Clara was alone. She stood in the knee-deep snow, dressed only in a thin woolen dress and a frayed shawl. Within seconds, the biting cold sliced through her clothes, sinking into her flesh like 1,000 tiny needles. She began to walk, because standing still meant dying faster. The whispering wastes lived up to their name. The wind howled through the skeletal, ice-coated trees, creating a sound like a chorus of screaming women. Clara stumbled forward, her bare hands tucked tightly under her armpits. Every breath burned her lungs. Every step was a battle against the heavy, suffocating snow. Hours passed, or perhaps it was only minutes. Time lost its meaning in the whiteout. Her feet, initially screaming in agony, had gone completely numb, feeling like heavy blocks of wood. Her eyelashes froze together. Clara fell, her face burying into the powder. She forced herself up, taking another 3 steps before falling again. "Why keep going?" a traitorous voice whispered in her mind. "Just close your eyes. It will be warm soon." She knew the signs of terminal hypothermia, the sudden, deceptive feeling of warmth. As she lay in the snow, staring up at the darkening grey sky, a strange peace washed over her. She was so tired. The cruel faces of Cedric and Becca faded from her memory, replaced by a quiet, heavy darkness. Then she heard the crunch of snow. It wasn't the wind. It was deliberate, heavy. Clara weakly turned her head. Through the swirling white blizzard, a pair of glowing, sickly yellow eyes pierced the gloom. Then another pair, and a third. Rogues. 3 massive, emaciated wolves stepped out from the tree line. Their fur was matted with filth and dried blood, their ribs jutting out from their flanks. They were starving, pushed to the brink of madness by the winter, and they had found an easy meal. Clara didn't even have the strength to scream. She simply closed her eyes, waiting for the tearing of teeth, praying it would be aimed at her throat, so the end would be swift. A roar shattered the icy silence, a sound so deep, so earth-shatteringly primal, that the ground beneath Clara's shivering body vibrated. It was not the howl of a normal wolf. It sounded like the mountain itself was tearing open. Clara forced her heavy eyelids open, just as a massive shadow blotted out the grey sky. A wolf the size of a warhorse slammed into the 3 starving rogues. The beast was pitch black, its thick fur tipped with an eerie metallic silver that caught the faint winter light. The violence was instantaneous and absolute. The black monster clamped its massive jaws around the neck of the first rogue, snapping the spine with a sickening crack and tossing the body aside as if it weighed nothing. The second rogue lunged, but the black wolf swiped a paw the size of a shield, its claws acting like broadswords. The rogue was gutted mid-air, its blood painting the pristine snow a bright, steaming crimson. The third rogue, realizing the sheer, impossible gap in power, tucked its tail and scrambled backward, whining in terror. The black wolf did not let it escape. It pounced, pinning the rogue to the permafrost, and delivered a fatal, crushing bite to the skull. Silence fell over the clearing, save for the heavy, rhythmic panting of the giant beast. Clara lay paralyzed, her heart hammering weakly against her ribs. The adrenaline was the only thing keeping her conscious. She knew of only one pack that bred wolves of this monstrous size, a pack that lived far to the north, ruling the unforgiving mountains with an iron fist, the ironclad Dominion, and the wolf before her could only be their ruler. Alpha King Kaelin, known across the continent as the Beast of the North, rumored to be a ruthless, bloodthirsty tyrant who slaughtered entire packs that refused to bend the knee. The massive wolf slowly turned its head. Eyes the color of molten gold locked onto Clara's tiny, freezing form. The beast stalked toward her, its massive paws sinking into the bloody snow. It leaned down, its hot, metallic-scented breath washing over her face. "This is it," Clara thought. "He saved me from the rogues just to claim the kill for himself." She looked into the golden eyes of the king, refusing to look away, mustering the very last ounce of her pathetic dignity. If she was to die, she would not die cowering. The wolf's eyes widened a fraction. The massive beast froze, inhaling deeply. A low, rumbling sound vibrated in its chest. Not a growl of anger, but something deeper, something possessive. Suddenly, the shifting began, the agonizing crack of bones rearranging, the shrinking of mass. Clara weakly shielded her eyes, her vision swimming in and out of darkness. When she lowered her frozen hand, a man was kneeling beside her in the snow. He was breathtakingly terrifying. Broad-shouldered and powerfully built, Kaelin possessed sharp, aristocratic features, marred by a jagged, faded scar that ran from his left temple down to his jaw. His raven-black hair whipped violently in the wind. Even naked in the freezing blizzard, he seemed entirely unaffected by the cold, radiating heat like a furnace. Before she could speak, before she could even beg for her life, Kaelin shrugged off the heavy, fur-lined cloak he must have left nearby before shifting. He wrapped it tightly around Clara's freezing body. The fur was incredibly warm, smelling intensely of pine, wood smoke, and a masculine musk that sent an inexplicable jolt through Clara's dormant blood. "Weak!" His voice was a deep, gravelly baritone that demanded absolute submission. "You are freezing to death, little rabbit." "Please," Clara stuttered, her teeth chattering so violently she bit her tongue. He didn't wait for her to finish. Kaelin scooped her up into his massive arms effortlessly, as if she were made of feathers. He pulled her tight against his bare, burning chest, wrapping the cloak securely around them both. "Rest," he commanded, his golden eyes burning into hers. "You are in the domain of the ironclad now. Nothing will touch you." The sheer authority in his voice, combined with the overwhelming heat of his body, finally broke Clara's tenuous grip on consciousness. She slumped against his chest, the darkness taking her completely. When Clara finally opened her eyes, she was not dead, nor was she in the snow. She was staring up at a massive canopy bed draped in heavy crimson velvet. The air was thick with the scent of roasted meat, herbs, and burning cedar. She shifted, realizing she was lying on a mattress stuffed with the softest down, covered in layers of thick furs and wool blankets. The agonizing cold was gone, replaced by a deep, heavy ache in her limbs. "She awakens," a brisk voice noted. Clara turned her head. A sturdy older woman with braided grey hair, Helga, perhaps, judging by her traditional northern garb, was wringing out a cloth over a basin of steaming water. Where am I?" Clara croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. You are in Castle Rivenrock, the stronghold of the iron-clad Dominion, Helga replied, approaching with a goblet of warm broth. Drink this, slowly. You were half dead when the king brought you through the gates. 2 days you've been burning with fever. Clara obeyed, the warm liquid soothing her raw throat. 2 days? She remembered the giant black wolf, the man with the scar, Alpha King Kalen. Why? Clara started, her voice shaking. Why didn't he kill me? Helga paused, her expression unreadable. Our king does not kill indiscriminately, girl, despite what the southern weaklings whisper about him. Though, Helga tilted her head, looking at Clara curiously. It is strange. He brought you straight to his personal chambers. He hasn't let the royal physician touch you. Only me. The heavy oak doors of the chamber suddenly swung open, crashing against the stone walls. The temperature in the room seemed to drop and spike all at once. Kalen strode into the room. Fully clothed now in dark leathers and a thick pelt draped over one shoulder, he looked every inch the merciless ruler of the north. His presence was suffocating, dominating the massive room effortlessly. Leave us, Helga, Kalen commanded, his eyes fixed solely on Clara. Helga bowed deeply and hurried out, pulling the heavy doors shut behind her. Clara pulled the furs up to her chin, terrified. Up close, awake, the king was even more intimidating. He moved with the predatory grace of a beast barely contained in human skin. He stopped at the edge of the bed, looking down at her with those intense, molten gold eyes. What is your name, Omega? He asked. His tone was not a request. It was a demand. Clara, she whispered. Clara, formerly of the Silver Pine Pack. Silver Pine. He tasted the word, his upper lip curling in disgust. Cedric Gallagher's territory, a man with the spine of a worm. Why were you cast out into the wastes? Clara hesitated. Would he believe her? Her own pack hadn't. Why would the most feared alpha in the world? I was framed, she said, her voice gaining a fractional amount of strength. They accused me of poisoning the Alpha's air. I was innocent. But I am a wolfless Omega. I am useless to them. So they banished me to die. Kalen stepped closer. He reached out, his large, calloused hand hovering over her face before he gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear. His touch was startlingly gentle, sending a spark of electricity racing down Clara's spine. Wolfless, he mused, leaning in. The scent of pine and ozone washed over her. He inhaled deeply, right near her neck, making Clara gasp and stiffen. They are fools, Clara of Silverpine. Blind, ignorant fools. He pulled back, his golden eyes flashing with a sudden, possessive fury that made Clara's heart race. You are not broken, the Alpha King whispered, his voice dropping to a dangerous, intimate rumble. You are simply dormant, and you are mine. Clara stared at him, shock rendering her speechless. The most feared Alpha King in the world was claiming the weakest outcast as his own. Rest now, Kalen said, straightening up, his expression hardening back into an unreadable mask of iron. Tomorrow, you will join me in the Great Hall. The iron-clad Dominion will meet the woman I pulled from the ice. And soon. Silverpine will learn what happens when they throw away what belongs to the King of the North. The morning sun did nothing to warm the jagged peaks surrounding Castle Rivenrock, but inside Clara's chambers, a roaring hearth kept the biting chill at bay. Helga stood behind her, pulling the laces of a heavy velvet gown tight. It was a deep, midnight blue, lined with snow fox fur. the colors of royalty. Clara stared at her reflection in the polished bronze mirror. She barely recognized the woman looking back. The starved, trembling outcast of the Silverpine pack was gone, replaced by a striking figure with high cheekbones and a gaze that held a newfound, cautious fire. "You look like a true lady of the North," Helga murmured, pinning a silver brooch shaped like a howling wolf to Clara's shoulder. "But the court of the Ironclad is a pit of vipers. Keep your chin high, child. Do not let them smell your fear." The massive oak doors opened, and Alpha King Kaelin stepped inside. He wore a tunic of dark leather, reinforced with steel plates, a heavy bearskin draped over his broad shoulders. When his golden eyes landed on Clara, the very air in the room seemed to thicken. The raw, possessive hunger in his gaze sent a jolt of heat straight to her core, a strange, deep fluttering in her chest that she had never felt before. It felt almost like a heartbeat, but not her own. "You are radiant," Kaelin stated, offering his arm. His voice left no room for debate. Clara placed her hand on his forearm, feeling the steel-hard muscle beneath the leather. "They will hate me," she whispered as they walked down the torch-lit stone corridors. "An Omega, a castaway from a weak southern pack." "Let them," Kaelin rumbled, his jaw tightening. "My word is law, and my wolf has made his choice." The great hall of Rivenrock was a cavernous space built from black obsidian and iron, filled with hundreds of the most lethal warriors on the continent. As Kaelin entered, the raucous noise of the court instantly died. Every eye turned to the king, and then, with collective shock, to the tiny, dark-haired woman on his arm. Kaelin led her up the stone steps to the dais, bypassing the secondary chairs entirely, and pulling her directly to stand beside his massive iron throne. The silent outrage in the room was palpable. A tall woman with striking platinum hair and a cruel, beautiful face stepped forward from the crowd. Lady Genevieve Ashdown, daughter of Kaelin's top military commander, General Montgomery Ashdown. For years, Genevieve had been the presumed choice for Luna of the ironclad Dominion. "My king," Genevieve spoke, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "we rejoice at your safe return from the Whispering Wastes, but we are confused. Who is this frail creature you have placed upon the royal dais?" "Her name is Clara," Kaelin's voice boomed, echoing off the obsidian walls. "She is under my protection." General Montgomery stepped forward, bowing stiffly. "With respect, Alpha King, the scent on her is faint. She bears no wolf, an Omega, and a dormant one at that. The laws of the Hemlock Accord state that the king must take a mate of strength. To bring a wolfless stray into the royal court—" "Watch your tongue, Montgomery," Kaelin snarled, a terrifying guttural sound that caused the seasoned general to physically recoil. Kaelin's eyes flashed from gold to glowing, unnatural amber. "She is no stray. She is my fated mate." Gasps erupted throughout the hall. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Fated mate? The moon goddess's ultimate decree. It was the only explanation for why the ruthless beast of the north had stopped to save a freezing Omega, and why his proximity made the dormant, dead space inside her chest suddenly throb with frantic life. "A trick!" Genevieve hissed, losing her composure. "The Silverpine pack cast her out for treason. She is a poisoner. Word reached our borders this very morning. Alpha Cedric Gallagher claims she attempted to murder his heir." Kaelin stepped down from the dais, stalking toward Genevieve. The crowd parted like water. Cedric Gallagher is a coward who fears his own shadow, Kaelin said softly, the lethal calm in his voice far more terrifying than his shout. If Silverpine wishes to accuse my mate of treason, they will do it to my face. Send a raven to Gallagher. Tell him to come to Rivenrock to present his evidence. If he refuses, I will march the ironclad army south and burn Silverpine to the ground. He turned back to Clara, the murderous aura vanishing instantly, replaced by a fierce, shielding warmth. The court is dismissed. As the hall emptied in frantic whispers, Clara touched her chest. The fluttering was undeniable now. A heat, a pressure, clawing at her ribs. Kaelin noticed her trembling and wrapped his hands around hers. "What is happening to me?" she gasped, her vision swimming. "Your wolf is not dead, Clara," Kaelin whispered, pulling her against his chest. She was only sleeping, waiting for an alpha strong enough to wake her. The weaklings of Silverpine suffocated her. I am setting her free. 1 month later, the courtyard of Castle Rivenrock was buried beneath a fresh layer of snow, but the air crackled with a suffocating tension. Alpha Cedric Gallagher and Luna Becker stood in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by a dozen of their most elite Silverpine guards. They looked utterly out of place, their southern furs inadequate against the brutal northern wind, their expressions caught between arrogance and deep-seated terror. They had answered the summons. Refusing the Beast of the North was a death sentence. The heavy iron doors of the keep ground open. Kaelin emerged, a towering figure of dark vengeance, flanked by General Montgomery and the heavily armored ironclad guard. But it was the woman walking beside Kaelin that made Cedric's jaw drop and Becca's face drain of all color. Clara walked with her head held high. The timid, broken girl they had thrown into the blizzard was completely gone. She wore a tailored riding habit of black leather, a silver crown resting upon her dark hair. Her eyes, once wet and fearful, were sharp and unyielding. "Clara," Cedric breathed in disbelief. "How—" "Welcome to Rivenrock, Alpha Cedric," Kaelin's voice cut through the howling wind like a blade. "You claimed my mate as a traitor to your pack. I invited you here to prove it." Becca recovered her shock, her face twisting into a mask of ugly fury. "Mate? You claim this defective mutt as your mate? She poisoned my son. She is a murderer. The laws of the continent demand her execution." "Lies," Clara spoke. Her voice didn't shake. It carried across the courtyard, clear and resonant. "Toby's sickness was caused by the hemlock root you ground into his tea, Becca. I saw the stained mortar in your chambers. You poisoned your own son to frame me because you could not stand the sight of an Omega receiving the pack's affection." "You lying bitch!" Becca shrieked, losing her mind. In a flash of blind, irrational rage, she shifted. A mottled brown wolf tore out of her human skin, lunging past the Silverpine guards directly at Clara, jaws snapping for her throat. "No!" Cedric yelled, but he was too slow. Kaelin didn't even flinch to protect Clara. He simply watched. Because before Becca could cross the final 3 yards, the air around Clara seemed to explode. A blinding flash of pure, ethereal light erupted in the courtyard, accompanied by a shockwave that knocked the Silverpine guards off their feet. The agonizing restriction in Clara's chest finally snapped. The cage was broken. A roar shattered the sky, a sound more musical and piercing than Kaelin's earth-shaking bellow. Where Clara had stood, a magnificent beast now stood. A wolf of pure, blinding white, larger than any standard alpha, glowing with an otherworldly luminescence. Her fur caught the sunlight like crushed diamonds. Silver runes faintly shimmered beneath her coat. She was not just an Omega. She was a royal winter wolf, a bloodline thought to be extinct for 1,000 years. A wolf so powerful it required the presence of a true alpha king to unlock its dormant strength. The white wolf lunged. With a single fluid motion, Clara pinned Becca's brown wolf to the cobblestones, her glowing jaws wrapped securely around Becca's throat. A low, terrifying growl rumbled from Clara's chest, demanding absolute submission. Becca whimpered, pressing her belly into the snow, utterly dominated by the sheer, crushing aura of the royal Omega. The courtyard was dead silent. Even General Montgomery fell to his knees in awe. Kaelin stepped forward, a proud, lethal smile gracing his scarred face. He looked at Cedric, who was trembling violently, his eyes wide with horror at what he had thrown away. "You cast out a goddess given royal," Kaelin sneered, his golden eyes glowing. "You allowed a jealous, treacherous woman to poison your own bloodline, and you blamed an innocent. You are no alpha, Cedric Gallagher." "Mercy, King Kaelin," Cedric begged, dropping to his knees in the snow. "Please. I did not know." "Ignorance is no excuse for cruelty," Kaelin replied coldly. "By the ancient laws of the Hemlock Accord, I strip you of your rank. The Silverpine Pack is hereby dissolved and absorbed into the ironclad Dominion. Becca will be locked in the ice dungeons for her crimes against her own child. And you, Cedric, will be banished to the Whispering Wastes. Let us see if the Moon Goddess guides you through the long frost." Clara released Becca, stepping back as the ironclad guards seized the screaming Luna and the sobbing former Alpha. She shifted back into her human form, the blinding light fading to reveal her breathless, but entirely whole, wrapped instantly in Kaelin's warm, heavy cloak. Kaelin pulled her into his arms, kissing her fiercely in front of both their armies. It was a claim, a promise, and a victory. The winter woods had been meant to be her grave. Instead, they had been her crucible. Clara had walked into the ice as a powerless outcast, and she emerged as the Queen of the North, reigning beside the most feared alpha in the world, unyielding and unbroken. If you were captivated by Clara's rise from a banished Omega to the fierce Queen of the North, don't keep this epic romance to yourself. Hit that like button, share this story with your fellow werewolf romance lovers, and make sure to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling tales of betrayal, fated mates, and undeniable alpha power. Join our pack today and never miss a single dramatic twist.